But to Newswatch, some ABC reporters choked today to see the Pope welcome Cardinal George Pell back to the Vatican, welcome him very publicly after 3 years in Australia where Pell was jailed over completely false charges of child sexual abuse until the High Court threw out his conviction 7-0. Now, seeing Pell treated as an innocent man, redeemed as he should be, really offended some of his worst persecutors of the ABC, which of course ran a witch hunt against him for years that ultimately had him in jail for 405 days for a crime that he could not possibly have committed. Louise Milligan, for instance, the chief persecutor, who wrote a whole book trashing Pell with trashy allegations, tweeted that the Pope should read findings of the Royal Commission into Child Sexual Abuse before welcoming Pell back. Joining me is Gerard Henderson, head of the Sydney Institute, columnist with the Australian newspaper and author of the Media Watchdog blog. Gerard, what is the significance of what the Pope has done?
Well, just take it back a fraction. The Pope Francis is a liberal theological Catholic. Cardinal Pell is a conservative theological Catholic. So they don't agree on lots of matters of, at the margins of matters of theology. But I think there was a view in the Vatican all along that among those people who were good men on either sides of the theological debate, that the good men in the Vatican didn't believe that Cardinal Pell was a pedophile. And therefore, I think Francis stood by him. And now that Francis' position, which was criticised by many at the time, including in Australia, now that Francis' position has been vindicated by a very surprising, with the view of the vote, a 7-0 vote in the High Court of Australia, I think in view of the fact that he's been vindicated, now that Cardinal Pell's in Rome, he's invited him in for a very public meeting, which was filmed, as you know. I think that's really what it's all about. The interesting thing is that Pope Francis and also Cardinal Pell both had great belief in the Australian judicial system. It took 405 days to work it out, but eventually they were proved correct.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to claim a victory when the bloke should never have been in jail in the first place.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
I think there's a real inquiry needed into this. Pell's return comes as his enemies in the Vatican have fallen. He'd been in charge of fighting corruption there until he was forced back to Australia. Now, the main man that he was after when he was head of Treasury, the Vatican's finances, Cardinal Becciu, has been sacked by the Pope for corruption and accused even of sending $1 million to Australia to frame Pell. He denies that, says he's innocent of everything, and there's no hard evidence of what he actually did with that money that came here, if he was directly responsible or not. Has the ABC yet mentioned that allegation, though, Gerard?
Just before I come to that, I should also say that the claims about George Pell and the Royal Commission, we should bear in mind that these are findings. There is no documentary evidence against him and no independent witness evidence against him. These are opinions of Royal Commissioners. They're not findings of a court. Having said that, in relation to the argument in the Vatican, no, there have been reports in 9 newspapers. There's been coverage in the Australian and News Corp newspapers. But on the ABC main news and current affairs program, it's just a form of censorship. They won't mention the fact that this allegation has been made, that money came from Pell's enemies in the Vatican to Australia in order to try and influence the outcome of the proceedings against him. Now, I'm not saying this is true. I'm not saying that it's false. I do believe there should be an inquiry into it. But I think it's outrageous that people who only watch the ABC would never even know that this matter of high news importance, which is being covered in Europe and North America, is censored on the taxpayer-funded public broadcaster here. It is incredible.
Meanwhile, of course, they spent years peddling allegations against Pell that proved to be trash. So they didn't mind that. But they won't even mention the fact that there's this other allegation out there. Yeah. Milligan's response suggests to me a witch hunt mentality of the ABC, bitter, they can't accept the fact that it's been found innocent, which we've talked about before. In fact, again, I can't recall, Gerard, a single ABC presenter who ever defended Pell publicly. But you tell me that you found one man who says he always believed that Pell was innocent, an ABC presenter, a journalist there. But I think this case actually proves my point. But tell us about him.
Well, I have said on the program before that I thought there were a few people at the ABC who had indicated to me that they did not believe that George Pell was guilty, but they weren't prepared to say it publicly. I've always suspected that. But what's happened, I made a comment about Noel Debien. Now, in my media watchdog on Friday, now Noel Debien is a 25-year journalist at the ABC, so he's a very experienced journalist. And he objected to the comment that I made, that I thought that his support for Pell's after his acquittal didn't compensate for the fact that, in view of what he obviously believed,
let me read it out for the viewers, because we've got the graphic up here. His response to you was, I feel a certain pariah sense in the ABC for never having said George was guilty as charged. My colleagues have conscientiously invited me to speak on air, so I know that they're totally professional, but also know that in private they found my view unusual and unexpected. Here's what I don't get about you having got this response out of him, Gerard. I've gone through a list of his essays on the ABC website. I can't find anywhere actually expressed this view publicly. I might have missed it, but his name never crossed my radar.
Well, he made a comment after the High Court decision, but my point is this: after. Or on the day of, but after. But my point is this: if such an experienced journalist, and he's an intelligent and considered man, feels that he is a pariah among his colleagues simply because he has a view that ends up being the view of 7 judges of the High Court of Australia, and Justice Weinberg in the Victorian Court of Appeal, who most people would acknowledge is Australia's most experienced criminal jurist, but if you hold that view in the ABC, you are a pariah. Now, no wonder others didn't speak up, because if someone who's been there for 25 years feels that he's a pariah, imagine what someone feels who's been there for a year or 2 years.
Gerard,
now, what this tells you is that it's a groupthink. If ever there's an example of groupthink, and there are many examples of groupthink, this is it. This is it. And Noel Debien has said it publicly on his Facebook post.
And also, I might say, he's a pariah for expressing a view about George Pell that I didn't hear him actually make in public when the heat was on, when an innocent man was in jail. I never heard it. And it's still a pariah. I can't believe this. An interesting exchange on the ABC's Q&A last night, Gerard, a very friendly chat between host Hamish MacDonald and Labor leader Anthony Albanese, which had a swing at Sky News. Here it is.
I think if they watch Sky After Dark, they don't expect a balanced coverage like you get on the ABC.
Well, what do you think is going on?
Look, in some cases, some of Sky After Dark is biased against the Labor Party. Yes, it is. That's just...
What's the evidence of that?
Anyone, have you watched it?
No, definitely not.
I tend not to watch it very much either, but you look at who the presenters are, who they have on as guests, what their coverage is, and it doesn't present and doesn't pretend to present a balanced point of view.
Now, they said, of course, no ABC presenter would watch Sky, and Albanese said it's the ABC that's balanced. Your response?
Well, I think in terms of panels, there are more left-of-centre panellists on Sky News than there are right-of-centre panellists on the ABC.
Thank you. That's the only point I need you to make. That's the only point I need you to make, because I'm actually out of time. I'm terribly sorry, Gerard. I'm getting yelled at by people. I don't want to offend Alan Jones. No one does. Thank you so much indeed for your time.
Okay.